Portrait of the Adult Gay as a Young Man, a selection of semi-autobiographical, fictional journal entries. October 4th, 2000. I never liked Jim, but today was worse than usual. Today, we went outside and we played football. Unlike everyone else, apparently, I didn't grow up playing football. I don't even know the rules, and honestly, I don't even know how to throw a football. So of course, I was terrible, and some of the cool guys made fun of me. I just stood on the field mostly. I've never really been that athletic. Other than soccer, I'm not really good at any other sport. Not even basketball, even though all black kids are supposed to be good at that. I don't even like watching sports on TV. I know it doesn't matter, but the fact that I don't like to play or watch most sports kind of makes me feel like less of a guy. October 21st. Even though I've been here for 2 months, I still don't like my new school. I'm the only black guy in my grade, and everyone here is a Republican. The mother and daughter in my carpool actually believe that Al Gore is the Antichrist. They would be horrified if they came to my family's church. Our pastor told us that bad things would happen if Bush became the next president. But I do have some friends. One of my best friends is Derek. He's really smart, and even the cool kids seem to respect him. We discovered we both like to play cards, and so we play in homeroom before classes start, and sometimes at lunch. One of my other best friends is Heather. She journals and likes to write poetry and stories like me. She has a really vivid imagination, and she's very deep. She thinks about God and the Bible and sin in really interesting ways, some ways I've never thought of before. We have long conversations on AOL Instant Messenger well into the night. I feel like I could tell her anything. November 10th. So for the month of November, instead of gym, we have health class. So even though it's kind of boring, today we watched a video about the homosexual agenda. I can see why it's such a damaging lifestyle. The promiscuity, the drunkenness, the godlessness. Still, I don't see any reason to shun gay people or kick them out of church. Maybe the problem is that our gender norms are too strict, and that if we just let everyone be who they are, no one would feel a need to rebel. Another thing I noticed about the video is that everyone who was gay in it was white. We don't talk much about homosexuality in church, but I remember one Sunday when the pastor was warning the congregation about assimilating to white culture, and he noted that one of the things that whites were trying to pass on to black people was homosexuality. So maybe you don't have to worry about being gay if you're black. Maybe it's just a white people thing. November 19th. So I had lunch with the guys today, Derek, Nick, Mike, Tim, Josh, and James. And they were talking about girls. Which girls at our school were hot, and what made them hot. Nice teeth, slender body, long flowing hair, well-developed breasts. And then which girls were ugly, unwaxed faces, heavy-set, flat-chested. I didn't like the conversation. I didn't like how they were objectifying girls. It seemed wrong, lustful to me, so I was silent. After lunch, my best friend Derek, noticing I had been silent, asked me if I liked any of the girls in our grade. I told him I like Heather. I mean, of all the girls in our grade, I get along with her the best. He then asked me what I like about her. I told him, well, I think she's smart, funny, and interesting, and I like talking and hanging out with her. I knew he wanted me to say something about her body, but I don't think of girls that way. I don't objectify women. He told me I should ask her out, but I don't know. P.S. I got to sit next to Mike at lunch today. We're not good friends or anything, but I kind of like hanging out with him. I don't know why. He's funny and he doesn't tease me. December 13th. In Bible class today, we talked about Romans 1. I don't think I'd ever thought much about this chapter before. At church, we usually focus on the Gospels, or the Old Testament stories of the ancient Israelites. But here, everyone seems to spend a lot of time talking about Paul. Mr. Adler explained that Romans 1 condemns homosexuality, men being attracted to and having sex with men, and women doing the same thing. I've heard homosexuality condemned before, but this time it made my heart race and my ears and face grow hot. I looked down at my desk and tried not to look at the teacher or anyone else. Mr. Adler said that homosexuality was worse than any other sin because it's unnatural. I had always been taught that all sin was equally bad, but I guess I can see why homosexuality would be the worst. It does, after all, go against God's fundamental design for humanity. But what if a person is gay and can't help it? What if a person is gay but doesn't act on those desires? Are those desires also worse than any other sin besides engaging in homosexual acts? December 30th. 2 nights ago, I had planned to tell Heather I liked her over the phone. Derek encouraged me to. I had told her I had something I needed to share with her, and that it was important. She seemed a little annoyed and said I was being a bit dramatic, her word. And then I couldn't say it. I tried, but the words wouldn't come out because I realized it wasn't true. I realized it couldn't be true. She could tell I was upset and urged me to tell her what was wrong. I shook with fear. How could I tell her the truth when it was the worst thing in the world? I was afraid of what she would think of me. I was afraid she would stop being my friend. I cried. Finally, after much coaxing on her part over the course of more than an hour, I told her, I'm gay. Just like I'm telling you now. I'm gay. Just like I'm reminding myself now. I'm gay. I cried myself to sleep that night, and even now while writing this, I'm crying.
This is called What You Taught Me in Secrecy, and it's directed to the Evangelical Church. I'm not sure I can do this anymore. As I stare at the floor in this back row pew, I knew few people would ever get it. This thing about me. I can't even put words to it most days because of my truth. If it spills from my tongue, I fear being hung from the same cross Jesus was, but keeping my legs crossed is the only cross I'm worried about keeping sitting next to this girl in youth group. I just sat through another church service on homosexuality, which you use as a term to reference those mentally ill people threatening the sanctity of what you call marriage, or expecting equal rights, or suing people for not making their wedding cake. But one, I don't think you realize how uninclusive and invalidating that term is to the millions of people that fall somewhere on the LGBT, TTTIQQAAPP plus spectrum where same-sex lifestyles aren't always direct results. So does that mean the rest of those letters aren't quite so wrong to you? Just curious, because sometimes you say it's only a sin if you act on it. So if a female bi plus person marries a man, is that still acting on it? By the way, how did you know that you were straight? Was that a choice you made or a product of biology? And I'm only asking because there's lots of holes in the story that don't make sense to me, but that's besides the point. When you were preaching that day, I don't think you realized you were speaking to a room full of closeted gays that would take years to realize that maybe you were the one that was wrong. Maybe we were never the problem. Maybe this thing, it isn't a burden at all. When you were teaching that day, you taught us that our struggles, all this is just our burden to bear in the name and cause of Christ as a persecuted Christian in America. You said that all people are born with some predisposition to sin because of the choice made by Adam and Steve or Eve or whoever that was. And because of their choice, that one day, my soul's inborn evil state is homosexuality, and that gayness and the mental illness and suicidal thoughts that apparently accompany, that's just my cross to carry. In that same lesson, though, you taught me that agonizing pain and torture is the rightful punishment for sin, as evidenced by the day that Jesus was unjustly crucified, carrying the weight and sins of people like me. You said he died because of me. Not for me, again shifting blame to remind me that this is all my fault anyways. But if that is what is seen as the most heroic response to sin, then I sacrifice myself, my life, and my skin as retribution for the sinful state of life that I apparently live in. And to embody the responsibility I couldn't take for Christ that day, I'll make up for it, I promise. In the name of following Christ, I'll deny myself love. I'll deny myself authenticity and community. I'll deny myself the life I could only ever dream of, knowing I'd sacrifice my life any day before the Freudian slip comes out that I'm gay. Before you even knew about my secret, you taught me all this. You also taught me to love the sinner, hate the sin, but first of all, maybe this isn't even a sin to me. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of me, though not all of me. So When you say you hate my sin, all I hear is you hate me, and that my friends isn't something I need. I already hate myself enough. What you taught me to do well when you told me the greatest commandments were love God first, love your neighbor second. That taught me that any love for myself comes last, and it's all hitting fast. And maybe this isn't the only way things can be. You've been blaming me this whole time. You silenced me. You shoved me in a closet and fed me the lie that I was better off there, suffering in silence, having not acted on my temptation, the risk, even imagining what kind of life could exist outside of the cardboard box you call Christianity. We told ourselves that this is just our cross to carry, better buried, still fighting than living a worldly life astray. But when May comes and leaves turn, we were told the truth would always find us. But what if my truth is my different sexuality or gender identity? And if there's only truth and love, then my expression of self be the fullest expression of love you will ever see. I think it's funny you speak of a genderless God, but call he, and claim to understand the complex nature of the Trinity, yet you can't seem to fathom non-binary identities. I don't think Jesus is the only difference between us, and I agree our interpretation of the same book lead us different ways. But I think your religion says just do, but my Jesus says just be. You claim you fear for our eternal salvation as we live in sin, yet you don't seem to care about our quality of life and the years we spend fighting ourselves inside. And despite losing thousands to suicide, you still stand behind defending doctrine and remaining locked into a system of judgment and dismay and hatred. No wonder no one wants to stay. You claim you're trying to protect the children or save your religion, but all you're doing is rejecting what God is trying to project to the world through them, and that is their project of authentic, real, unconditional love. Last thing I knew, God sent down rainbows to remind us that when the wind blows, there is still grace and mercy and love and acceptance out there. And I find it ironic that the homo stand more united under God's rainbow than your denominations do around the cross. The love I know goes something more like this. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So maybe if your love is failing in this department, it isn't really love at all. There's no room for secrets in love. There's no room for hate in love. There is tough love, but that's not what you're doing when you refuse to attend our weddings. You can't claim these lies anymore.
And so one thing I'd like to say before we begin this piece is that this is going to be basically the equivalent of heresy in my church. This is a letter for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, but it is not a breakup letter. Let's start at the beginning. I was married at 8. You were 173. Technically, we called it a baptism, but I know a wedding when I see one. First, my pastor interviewed me to see if I was emotionally and spiritually prepared to make this eternal commitment to you, dear church, and to God. He had to make sure we knew each other well enough. I was so scared, I studied a pamphlet written for Mormon children that explained what we were supposed to believe. My parents thought it was adorable, but I think I was right to be nervous. Then, my mom took me dress shopping. My grandmother lent me a white cotton dress for the baptism itself, but I needed a new dress to change into right afterwards. Something old and something new. The dress was leaf green and dotted with small pink roses. I wanted a different one. This one was bright green with dragonflies. But my mom said the dragonfly dress, was a little kiddish, and the dress of roses looked more grown up. That it was a dress I would still like when I looked at my baptism photos decades later. She's right. I like the rose dress more now that I'm an adult. My extended family drove hundreds of miles for the happy occasion. They couldn't miss one of the most important days of my life. Finally, the day arrived, the day you and I would be united forever. I wore my grandmother's white dress. My father officiated the ceremony, reciting the prayer and gently guiding me under the water. My grandfathers were witnesses, there to testify to you, dear church, and to God that I was baptized correctly. Then I changed into my grown-up dress, and my father laid his hands upon me and bestowed the Holy Spirit upon me and confirmed me a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. With that, I was married to you for eternity through nearly indestructible holy ties. Perhaps the people hearing this think I'm exaggerating. That's understandable. It's mind-boggling that a well-respected religion, 15 million members strong, would systematically marry their children to God before they learned their multiplication tables. But I can prove it. In Mormonism, baptism doesn't simply represent God's unconditional, all-consuming love. I was making a covenant, a contract, wedding vows. These vows were very specific. I promised to always remember you. I promised to keep your commandments. I promised to take your name upon me. Every week, I renewed those vows. Covenants. Every week in church. Every week, I heard those words. Every week, I promised myself to you again. And I knew that if I kept my vows and obeyed you, if I just, as you like to say, endured to the end, then I would be saved. Then I would live with God for eternity. And it was all going right. My teachers, my pastors, my family lauded me because I knew the scriptures so well, because I was so faithful and committed. I went to church every week. I renewed my covenants with you. I read the scriptures and prayed every day, sometimes for hours at a time. Everything was going right, except that I was gay. I finally admitted the truth to myself at 19, or more accurately, God revealed the truth to me and said, yes, I was gay. Yes, he made me this way. And it felt so right after so many years to finally acknowledge who I am. Then I remembered you, dear church. And I remembered the vows I made to you. I promised to obey you. And you were very clear that entering into a same-sex relationship was a terrible sin for anyone to commit. But it was even worse for someone married, baptized into God's only true church. How could I even consider it? How could I even think about breaking my vows and putting my soul in eternal jeopardy just to satisfy my carnal desires? Besides, what is a lifetime of loneliness compared to an eternity of exultant joy with God? I just needed to endure to the end, and it would all be worth it. Except a thought kept pestering me. It summed up well in Matthew 7:16. You will know them by their fruits. And, dear church, your fruit became bitterer by the day. Every hateful sermon, every time Mormons picked their gay roommates out, every time a gay Mormon was scared to go home for the holidays, every long hour 20-year-olds spent in psych wards with friends that had survived suicide attempts, and even longer hours remembering everyone who died too young. All of it soured and rotted your fruit until every bite burned like acid and left me gagging. But what about your covenants, you asked me? You wouldn't dare break those sacred ties, your wedding vows to me. There will be eternal consequences if you do. To that, I say one thing. They never counted. Those wedding vows, covenants, saving ordinances, whatever you want to call them. This sacred relationship that everyone said I was choosing, I chose as much as I chose to wear that grown-up green dress with roses. That is to say, not at all. That is why I stand here to testify before you, dear church, before God, and before everyone gathered here today, that this is not and could never be a breakup letter. This is an annulment, because I was a child, and I could not consent. And so, dear church, I'll end this letter the way every Mormon service and sermon ends. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
This is the 5th church I've been to in the past year. I guess I thought it'd be easier down here in Miami to find a church where I belong. One of my gay friends invited me to come along, and he's even doing children's ministry. But we both read the mission statement and got the hint that this isn't an affirming church. But I mean, I don't normally leave this church feeling sad, and the sermons aren't too bad. The music is good. It could be worse. Except today, it is worse. They found out my friend has a boyfriend, and after an awkward conversation over coffee, he was asked to step down from children's ministry. I'm so freaking done with this. My friend is a wonderful human being with a heart that yearns to serve, but now he was sitting here with me in the pews, tearfully breaking the news that he apparently can't be with kids, all because his identity isn't something he hid. Or no, actually they're okay with him being gay, it's just that he's acting on it, so that's why he can't serve. What? You want to know what's even more messed up though? Is a few weeks later they asked if he could help with the kids because they didn't have anyone else. And he did. He did. We're like dogs. We're dogs who hang around our master's table begging for the crumbs to fall. Once they really need us, then they'll call. They'll let us in just enough to make us feel like we're on the same playing field, just before pushing us back out to the sidelines to fetch balls. But I'm not in church anymore to change this part of me. I'm bringing all of me and create a Christ-following community who will take me as I am and help mold me into the best version of myself that I can be. I'm not really sure that community exists for me. My friend once told me if he could pray the gay away, he'd be the straightest man alive. Not because others prayed so fervently, but because he did. I'm so angry. I'm so angry, but I keep coming back. We both do. I want to belong. I want to belong, but how long can I keep seeking out this community when they continuously tell me that I am less? When they continuously remind me, whether subtly or loudly, that I do not belong here, that my lifestyle is unfitting for full involvement in the church. My lifestyle. They don't even know me. They don't know a thing about me. They don't know how I prayed every day for years. God, if this is not who I am, reveal it to me. If I am wrong in embracing this part of myself, let me know. I want to do what's right. Show me a sign. But more importantly, what they don't know is the warm embrace I felt inside almost every time that I prayed that prayer. It It was as if a hand had placed itself upon my shoulder to say, "You are enough. You are what I made you to be. There is meaning to all that is happening. Be still. Release your fears." It took years for me to finally listen, for me to finally realize that I am who I am, that God actually made me this way, that this me is a masterpiece. But I'm still striving to find peace because I'm always reminded that the community I once felt so connected to does not understand that I'm one of them. Maybe I'm not one of them. Maybe that's a good thing. Right now I have a group of friends who don't claim to be Christian, but they have shown me a Christ-like love that has wrapped me up and kept me on my feet during some very tough times. With them, being gay is a non-issue. There is no elephant in the room. There is no weight upon my lungs that looms that keeps me from being able to talk about my girlfriend. I am not inferior. I'm not blocked out. I'm not a sin. I am free when I'm with them. And once I knew what freedom was, once I knew what being fully loved felt like, I knew I couldn't keep settling for less. I have a friend in this group that once told me, "Mel, we don't tolerate you. We love you." I wrote that phrase down. I stuck it on the wall so I could mull over and maybe even accept the beautiful meaning of it all. That I was not a dog. That I was worth more than mere toleration. That I was worth being loved fully. What an amazing realization that was for me. But then, as the holidays arrived, I was reminded that freedom doesn't always follow us home. I'm not free to talk about the pain I have felt. I've tried. I can't talk about the love I found in her. I can't talk about the amazing freedom my soul has encountered being immersed in this new and non-Christian community. I can't talk about my newfound meaning of unconditional love. I can't even talk about how, despite all of that, I really miss feeling like I belong in a church. So here I am, sitting at home, alone on a Sunday, too tired to pray, too angry to hope, too desperate to stop hoping that one day I'll find a rainbow pew where I can sit beside my girlfriend, arm around her shoulder, in a church full of people who aren't going to try and pray us away.
Society is beginning to accept us. But what about the church? Are they able to see the hurt, hearts beating, our faith is bleeding out before your eyes? I spy true Christians by their love. I spy the church by its lack of acceptance. I only see tolerance and social negligence. But it's going to get better, I hope. On YouTube, I see these campaigns that tell us not to feel ashamed because we are who we are. It is written in our veins. Time is the hero that will wash out all bloodstains, drained. Is how I feel after each episode of coming out. I'm tired of opening up my heart only to have its contents empty out onto the icy pews. Some days during service, all I can do is look at my shoes and wonder why I choose to keep walking back into the pain. I conclude that I'm insane. How is it that the same Christianity that is causing this disdain has me trained to practice this thing called unconditional love? Something that we are all in search of. The same love that forces my wife to greet her sister with a hug at family get-togethers, despite her lack of acceptance for us to get together. It is the same love that makes us invite our parents to our weddings, even though we know that they will say no. It is the same love that makes me object to my own wedding, even though I'm dreading going through life alone. It is the same love where we allow ourselves to be nailed to your crosses of rejection, denying ourselves with the hopes of picking up your acceptance. It is the same love where we are so focused on dying for the church that we isolate ourselves from our own resurrections. But how can we be revived without any help? For where does my help come from? They say my help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. But God, these heavenly beings has me questioning my heavenly worth. Like seeds, we are all dispersed. Some may see me as amongst those that are cursed, climbing between weeds too far gone to convert. But whilst I hide in these weeds, I see them as worse. For their judgments are far too shallow to even be buried beneath the dirt. But it gets better, I promise. For if it weren't for the hurt, I would not have found this church. My first church to embody the words of Mary Lambert, because here it smells like safety and home. And I cannot write a poem strong enough for you to huff it all in, but what I can do is tell you that I found that special place. A place where parts of me are no longer ignored. A place that's obviously here to restore. A place the place that says let's go beyond the pews and put rainbows on the front doors. A church that says we are here to give rest to the worn. We have the same love that lets you know the struggle ends. The same love that mends hearts that are frail and torn. The same love in which your trust can be reborn. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You see, it's important that we keep showing up, because showing up favors success over failure. For when we fail to try, failure is guaranteed, whereas being present equips us to succeed. Just look at the leaves. Despite the autumn wind, some stay stuck to the trees, and this, my friends, is what we call evergreen. Just like those leaves, we must have a burning desire not to leave until we get what we need. So keep crying out until stubborn ears are weakened. Keep praying until your prayers are all of the way thin. Keep hoping until your hopes and reality begin to blend. Keep fighting until opposing backs begin to bend. And keep lifting up your eyelids when each new day comes in, because in the end, love wins. Love wins. Love wins.